Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Founders and Leaders series with Andrew Cooper, who is the founder and CEO of Verve. Long-time collaborator, sometime competitor. Andrew, welcome, and delighted that you joined us.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you for inviting me.
So tell us a bit about Verve. I know the company well. We've passed each other in the foyers of companies where we've been pitching in the dim and distant past against one another. But tell us a bit about Verve and where the business came from and what you're doing now.
Yeah, I probably need to go back a little bit further than I'm going to give kind of Verve its true history. I don't want to bore people with anything too long, but fundamentally, I was the co-founder of a company called Research Now, one of the early online access panel companies. That was a very interesting business. It was kind of very hard and then got a lot easier as this thing called the internet kind of caught on, and as we could kind of develop this new model called access panels with others. And that then started to see the structural change from face-to-face and telephone interviewing fieldwork to this thing called online interviewing and fieldwork. And that was very much my precursor to, well, that's how I fell into the research industry, as many people did. What happened though, I started 17 years ago now, but what happened in 2009 was I was getting a little bit tired of some conversations around respondent quality. And this was before respondent quality was really a thing. But it was also a bit confused because I still very vividly remember a conversation with a client from a big global brand that everyone knows, complaining to me about the quality of my Research Now respondents who were falling out of surveys after 30 minutes of a 45-minute grid survey. To which my point, which I didn't make to her face, was what kind of normal human being is still in there after 30 minutes of that kind of drudgery? It's just not a great user experience. And for me, that was one of the founding issues of the research industry's whole quant respondent issue, is that it's not just a case of getting real people to turn up, it's also making a good, fun user experience to take part in when you do. And that is, for me, one of they're the two key things you have to do in the world of research to get great research, is to get real people to turn up and make it an engaging experience when you do. It's a sustainable experience. So that's always been my kind of thing. That led into starting Verve on the basis that we are community panel specialists. And I know you were Vision Critical back in the day, and we were very much competitors, Mike. That model, as you know, and most people do them now because it's pretty well established, is one whereby you can give a better respondent experience because they are the client's customers. You build a community of John Lewis customers for John Lewis or Boots customers for Boots. And it's another brand touch point. It allows us to keep going back, but in a way that is respectful to the respondent's time. And it's going to be a positive experience. So that model has served us well, and it still continues to succeed, but it's also a fairly saturated market. Now, most people who want a community panel have one. What we were very fortunate to do was 3.5 years ago to start to look at AI and what could it do? How could it solve some of these problems of the insights industry? And the idea of if we can actually, talk to a customer and then remember everything that they've said and then augment it with other data sets, we can actually maybe build a virtual customer, or what became known as a synthetic persona, or what we call the Verve intelligent personas and simulations. And what these are now, 3.5 years in, with over 30 clients on board running with these simulations, are a brilliant solution to what I call the respondent crisis. How do we make research more engaging? Well, in my mind, there's no crisis in the world of qualitative research. People like taking part in qualitative interviews, and it's a conversation, and it's a real person talking about cloud computing because they are there and they're knowledgeable. And then what we can do is we can take that proprietary data, augment it with other curated sources, and then build a simulation that sits alongside that real human being. The real human being goes home. They kind of like to do that. It's kind of a bit of a liberty type thing. The simulation, however, it stays in the room and it never goes home. And then it can do onerous type questions. You can do 45-minute conjoints. We're leading the way in doing quant research with intelligent personas and simulations. So we can do the onerous stuff. We can do the tactical stuff. You wouldn't dare ask a cloud computing expert. You just don't have the time or the money for it. I mean, you can do stuff in between, such as depth interviews and all the rest of it. And this then becomes a situation whereby you've got this perfect human truth, the real people, part of everything, just like on communities, but often driven by qual. The simulation, which doesn't go home, so it gives you limitless, excellent, and affordable insight. A good simulation is better in my mind than an average sample. And then this creates this new model for insight. So we were very much anchoring ourselves into saying there's a new model here for insight. We're boxing it up into something that we can sell directly to clients, and we do. And do the consultancy on top of that. but we're also partnering with other agencies to help empower them, because there's just not enough time in this AI empowered world to sort of do this all on our own. We need to scale this, get this into a model that others can work alongside us with, and we can all go and help keep our clients happy, go and help, retain and win them, and actually offer a new model for this new AI empowered world. So that's kind of what Verve is these days. It is at its core real human truth. However, very much this model around building high quality synthetic personas which never go home and can do fantastic high quality research for some of the world's biggest brands. And people like Mars and Samsung, we've won fantastic SMR awards with them. We're very much in the stage of doing this right now.
Great. Okay. So I guess that's a sort of 20-ish year, feels like 3 phases of evolution to me. One is the kind of offline to online evolution with access panels and building those out. Another is actually deeper, more reliable quality with better engagement with the right kind of people. And then now using that deeper engagement, that metadata to build simulations. I love that as a strapline. Maybe it is a strapline for the business, that a good simulation is better than an average sample, if I'm recalling that right. But
it's exactly what we say, and I believe it. I really do.
It's provocative, isn't it? Because, a lot of people are touchy about, synthetic audiences, about personas. You've only got to scroll LinkedIn and you'll see people trashing them. Are you having to fight through those perceptions quite a bit?
Not necessarily fight, just have a really good quality discussion. So there's the whole synthetic landscape. There's lots of different types of synthetic data. We are very much in this one space here, which is you could call synthetic personas, which is building a simulation or a persona of a real human being, or maybe of a future customer as well. So it's not just limited to that, but that kind of space. I was at Tia Marie at the market research event in November last year. And they had the head of insight for Microsoft on stage, and they were asking her what is your most exciting thing for next year, and her view was always on qual, driving and constantly feeding the synthetic personas. Now, we don't work with Microsoft at the moment, but that is that model that we are very much been developing the last 3.5 years. Now, people have a mixed experience of this. I know there was an AI conference, a couple of weeks ago, and big brands got on stage. I won't name them here. Some with us, Eon, actually did get on stage and said, this is great. It's going really well. Get on and try it. Get started and learn learn things you don't know. And others have had a go and it didn't work. And that is, I think, that what you're referring to is like, do synthetic personas work? I regard it a lot like back in the early days of flying. Some guys had this idea that, flying would be a great idea. And so what did they do? They strapped some wings onto their arms and jumped off a cliff and landed disastrously into the sea. Now, was that a bad idea or just bad execution? And I would suggest it was bad execution. The idea was a good one. And we have, though, very much learned how to fly. Now, we can fly across the channel. We can perhaps even fly as far as Greece. We're not saying we can do transatlantic journeys, forever. I'm not saying these things are perfect yet, but they certainly really are, when refined and defined well for a certain use case. When you look at the data, proprietary data that your client has, and where, yes, that data with this other curated data could achieve that. And then what we do is build a simulation reassuringly slowly. This takes 4-6 weeks, because what we're doing at the same time is validating against what real humans beings say in holdout data versus what this simulation says. And so we correlations at 0.9, and we can prove all of this. We've done over 100 tests now, 100 tests that prove that kind of correlation level. And then we don't stop there. We continue to feed the simulation with new primary data, with new curated data sets. So these simulations are constantly developing and growing and improving. And the more research you do around them and with them, the better it all gets. So we are very much not a black box solution, which a lot of the industry is. We're an auditable solution. And we believe that for the market research industry, that auditability, that validity allows us to build simulations that you can make decisions of consequence off. Whereas our other models, where you point AI at the internet and it feels directionally correct and it might be okay for marketing decisions, but it ain't good enough for proper board level decision making. So we're all about board level decision making simulations that can inform and work in parallel with real humans. So humans are in the loop, but you save the humans for the good stuff. You don't get them doing the dull stuff, the confidential stuff, the drudgery, the onerous stuff. They come in and augment. So you've got this nice dual mode, real humans and simulations together, create something that absolutely works. And that model does work. Some clients have experience of something else that's not that, and guess what? They've had a bad experience. They're just. It's not about all men are bad. They've just picked the wrong one for this relationship.
Fair enough. So you talked about the auditability and, traceability. I mean, I think that is one of the big anxieties that people have about purely LLM driven synthetic outputs. We don't
Yeah.
really know the inputs. You don't really know the weights. But you were saying it actually, you can make this transparent and show exactly where things have come from.
Yep.
And is that so? You've got, you talked about the evolution of quality focus and data. You've got the community. So am I right in saying the communities are driving the persona development and the kind of ongoing refreshing of that data? Is that how it works?
They do, but not necessarily. So there's a nice next generation community model, which has real people and it has simulations sitting alongside. So the real people go home, the simulations do that. But this is also a model that doesn't need the community per se. It needs primary research data. And a lot of, lots of agencies have primary research data that is a starting point for building a simulation. But the thing we very much believe in is proprietary client data to build the simulation on behalf of the client, because that's where differential advantage comes from. I mean, if you're just pointing at the same data source as everyone else, you're just going to learn what everyone else learns. If that proprietary data you already trust as a client is a really fantastic starting point. So it could be from a community, that could be one of the inputs, but it could be from all kinds of stuff, from like CRM or whatever primary data sets that you have.
Okay. So you talked about two specific things there. The example that you gave was, a cloud provider or a cloud computing expert, which implies, very sort of niche B2B high expertise. So is it,
Yes.
are you finding success in the kind of those kind of niches in the B2B area? I guess that's the first question, which was about the quant. So let's just ask about the B2B thing to start with.
Yeah, the B2B is a really interesting one because, as we know, B2B audience is it's a small universe in the first place. So trying to get any decent size of sample from that universe is hard. And then there's a real problem in the access panels actually be able to get a cloud-based computing person to turn up for a $20 Amazon voucher. I mean, how real is that? I'm very skeptical. However, what there is not a problem with, and we're working with a big Swiss bank looking at building simulations of high net worth North Americans. And in contrast, but similar idea, is we're working with a financial advisory business, working with independent financial advisors. Now, both organizations have a problem, a challenge of how do I do B2B research, because it's really expensive and slow. But they do it. Now, what we can do is we can take the research they're doing, particularly the qualitative interviews that they've got with their high net worth clients or with their independent financial advisors. And that's a really good starting data set, a seed data set for building simulations of both those audiences. Then we can augment, and this is where a lot of the secret sauce comes in, with other data to create something that we can then test against the simulation. The point being is, as well, we've had a lot of success in B2B because we can solve an insoluble problem almost. How do I get a big cloud computing guy to just turn up hard? How do I get him to turn up instantly? Impossible. But the simulation will. And then you can do a whole bunch of things with that simulation that you don't have to bother the real human being for. You can create hypotheses, and then you can bring those hypotheses back to those real human beings. So it's this real nice mixed approach. The B2B has been one of the easier spaces as healthcare in many ways too, because it's just so hard. And even if you're not getting 0.9 correlations, which we often can, you're still getting a really good bit of insight or directionally correct insight that can help, with your program of work.
Fascinating. I started my career in B2B. In fact, one of the first I did was with panel builders, which is kind of electrical cabinet installers.
Wow.
So, those kind of niche audiences, I think, if there is a way of getting these people in, in a more kind of reliable way with some of these simulations personas, I think they're very valuable.
But I mean, one of the benefits you mentioned before about, one of the benefits is that no piece of research is ever forgotten. Because often we do a piece of research, we're asking about one thing, and people are telling us about other stuff, but that gets left on the cutting room floor because that wasn't what the client wanted to know. But you feed the simulation all of this, and it's got much more rounded, grounded data set based off that we as human beings have kind of forgotten or never reported upon. So there's nothing's ever wasted in it with the simulations, is our view.
Does that mean that there needs to be some mechanic to ensure that the insights from work that was done 5 years ago still remain fresh? There's some sort of audit that regularly, cleans that up?
Yeah, so it's when you build them in the first place, it's why it takes a bit of time. You've got to be quite careful what you put in and what you don't put in. It's not about a big data set, it's about high quality data set. It's all about depth and quality, not about big data. which I found quite refreshing. And you get a long way with a high quality data set, and gets you is really important. The other point is we have to talk about what simulation outputs, but you don't just take it at face value. We may talk later about human intelligence, and we believe this is a combination of human intelligence, cultural intelligence, and artificial intelligence together. We just require everyone in our business to operate at the top end of their consultancy level to make sure we are triangulating what the simulation suggests is the truth, and whatever other data, the data points, other things that we all know make sense. So you gotta make sure you're not just believing it blindly.
Okay, right. The other thing you mentioned that's intriguing is the quant side of things. You said being able to do sort of max diff or conjoint. Does that imply that you're multiplying these personas into hundreds or potentially thousands of instances, or is that not how it works?
No, I'm definitely not the right person to ask about the detail, but I can sort of tell you that's not our model. We don't believe in replicating a sample of 1,000 and then, there are people doing that. That's just not our gig. What we're much more interested in is building, if a client's got 6 segments, is let's build simulations of those 6 segments, which represent not just a persona, the center point, but actually the segment. So it can talk as like, we believe, we do 30% of us do this, that, and the other. Now, before people get a bit excited, you need to have the right quality of data set and the right depth of data set to do this. We can't just take a thin data set or a small one and do quant. So in circumstances where we work, for example, CACI, they have the Fresco segmentations, they have the Acorn segmentations, loads of high quality data that has been trusted for 40 years with those that underpins, not, those products are 40 years old, but it's high quality new fresh data that's underpinned by CACI high quality data. And then we enhance it by putting the simulations, the AI on top to bring all that to life, but then to be able to do quant. So with Fresco, we can actually do quant for the 12 financial services segmentation, because 90% of the UK's retail financial institutions contribute data to Fresco every week. So with that data and our approach to our clever statistical approaches to working with that, we can get segment level kind of quant for regression. The conjoints coming down the line, that's not fully productionized yet, but it's very much on the way. And what I find very interesting about this, Mike, as well, is that you mentioned earlier, do we have a battle sometimes? But what's really interesting is if people fall at the first block and say, oh, the simulations aren't very good because we weren't doing very well, they're not busy pushing the frontiers of, well, what can it do for quant? Because they've already discounted it. Whereas we've got a lot of success in what we keep taking another stage of the onion further and another layer, and it keeps getting better with obviously a lot of work and failure. Yeah. But then, trial, think about it again and then do it more. Yeah. It's very exciting.
Well, this is kind of one, obviously, a significant part of the AI enabled trends in research and insights. This is, you mentioned at the start, this is kind of an inflection point. We're going from one phase to another. We just step back and look more broadly. What are some of the other trends that you see happening right now in the industry? What are some of the things alongside the development of personas? What are some of the other areas of interest or things that are exciting you?
It's quite interesting because I know you're going to ask me, I think, a question maybe later on about, mistakes and opportunities. And I think one of my mistakes of the past is to see lots of good ideas and pursue lots of them. And as well as any size business, but certainly as a smaller to medium sized business, you've got to have focus. And so I'm very focused on this persona space because it is a very hot cake and I believe a model for the future. So there are other things that AI is doing and empowering, and we're leaving those intentionally for others to do. So I don't have a lot of focus on those. Obviously, AI for efficiency is very important in terms of how well we run our business. But generally, the trend of we must understand how we do better insight using AI is absolutely my key focus. And I'm very interested in that generally for an industry, but for Verve, we want to be specialists for one thing.
So it feels like
this space.
There's sort of 2 big implications from what you've talked about, really, is, one is, research businesses have previously, largely been about collecting primary data and, putting that to a degree or not, further up the kind of decision-making chain. This is really shifting into something that is absorbing lots of different types of data, maybe from different departments, beyond the kind of team. There's obviously issues of, data protection and trust and, all of that, which are new, but it's a different type of data. And then there's also a different type of skill and people profile and sort of training requirement, so how are those two things, both the kind of the units of currency that you're working with on the data side of things and the kind of the
Yep.
people skill, how are those playing out then for you at the moment?
Challenging. I mean, I think for the industry, it's
Yep.
challenging. The skills that are required, as you're hinting at, are
Yep.
different. And as we develop the model, we start to know what the skills really are for the new model. And are they similar but different to the old model? Well, yes, they are. And we need to make sure we hire people who are really good at what we really need. And we've got to be very careful not to try and put square pegs into round holes, because that doesn't work for anyone. So yeah, I mean, we're facing into the challenge of having some people with skills that are not as relevant as before versus needing skills that we don't have. So yeah, it's challenging, but it's not something we have a lot of option to do nothing about, because if we don't do something about it, there'll be new entrants come into the space who have just come equipped with the right shaped team, and they will win. And I'm very much of the view that to be able to look after a team, you've got to have a healthy business. It reminds me again back to the aircraft analogy. I seem to be full of them. When you do the emergency procedure, you got to told that you got to take that oxygen mask and put it on your mouth first before you look after children or others less able than you. And that's kind of exactly as a business. You've got to be a very able, capable business that is performing well to be able to look after your team. So you got to make sure you are doing that, and hence can look after your team by being successful. So yeah.
On your client side of things, there's the insights organization, and they are under pressure. They're changing quite quickly as well. They're experiencing some of the same things. But the way that I imagine a lot of the persona work happens is other stakeholders are interacting with these personas in the organization, and they're potentially providing data into that. Are you finding that this means you've got more connection into different parts of an organization, or is it still primarily through the insights function?
Definitely more connection. The insights function is very important, because for me, well, for us, AI is going to change all kinds of industries. But for me, the research or the insights industry is a really interesting one, because fundamentally we are, or should be as an industry, the purveyors of human truth. We are the guys who talk to people, customers, understand them, and bring that human truth into the boardroom. Not always successfully in the past, but like never before, we can take that human truth and we can give reliable abilities to bring insight to life like never before. Because not only can we do better insight with AI empowered approaches, but we can also put video in the boardroom that is based upon a whole brilliant data set that wasn't even affordable or feasible before. Now it is. So we take the view that taking human truth and turning it into superhuman advantage, creating superhuman powers for our clients is what we're all about. Can we empower our clients to be more relevant than ever before in their careers? Absolutely we can, because we can give them the tools based on high quality data, based on their real humans, faster than ever before. We can deliver insight at a pace that the marketeer doesn't get bored for waiting for it. It can actually arrive as they ask for it, rather than, oh, could we do this? And then people run around for 6 weeks and then they've moved on to something else as the marketeer because they don't care anymore. It's done. The decision's made. So we can be more decision relevant. We can be more capable of bringing that insight to life. It's not stuck in a PowerPoint deck. And I think it's really exciting. So yes, insight, the insight team are the guys who say this is high quality and decision, capable, decision ready. That over there, which you may have seen from somewhere else, is marketing interesting. It'll tell you whether blue or red is the right color, but it's not going to tell you the proper decision stuff. So we find insights very important. But this is also a proposition that goes further. It goes into UX teams, to design teams, to compliance teams. If you're in the financial services, it's you want to do your I can't remember what you call it now, but anyway, yeah, it's one of those things that it goes a long way. It's quite an easy to understand proposition that, if done properly, is very good. Which, to your point, is we do need to make sure that these simulations turn up and do what they're meant to do for the purpose they're meant to do it. And hence, it's not just a software platform or a build. It's a platform, build, maintain, update, continue to validate, and make sure that clients are using it for what it's trained for. Because I had a situation fairly recently where it was trained to do concept development and testing, and someone tried it out on political polling. Well, it's not trained for that.
This was the question that I had, actually, because it got a lot of people in organizations interacting with this who may not have. I mean, I've seen a marketer interacting with a persona, and asking questions of the persona in a way that no trained researcher or no good researcher, would ever express the question.
Yeah.
I think there changes in how the insight teams maybe, coach or train their organizations. Is that a role that your team is playing as well?
It's certainly a role that we and our clients need to play, but we need to be very careful how we put these things into the wild and how far we put them into the wild. So there's a couple of things we can do. One is training, absolutely. What's it? Very clear. The purpose of what it's trained for and what it's capable to give an opinion on is incredibly important. So that needs to be right up there, very clear on the screen when you're using it. We can also train in guardrails which says, I don't know about that. So our simulations do say no, which a lot of large language models don't. Well, the large language models generally as a base level don't. So the ability to say no is important. And then, yes, the ability to ask the right questions. Well, that's kind of often an organizational questions to who are you releasing it to for what purposes? And we do have predefined solutions such that if you want to do concept testing, well, here's a solution for that. And here's a battery of well thought through approaches, or here's an approach with a battery of well thought through questions or prompts to get you the right answer in a consistent way, which means you can do your benchmarking, all that kind of stuff.
So you mentioned that, these capabilities are giving insights people, agencies, providers, in-house teams, like the ability to maybe, influence a senior decision, put video in the boardroom, drive more engaging outputs, that type of thing. So that's the kind of the stuff in the output. But what about the people skills? Are there specific kind of skills or capabilities that you see growing in importance, both, in the client teams and in, say, agency, but it's whether we'll still be calling them agencies in a couple of years' time, I don't know, but, the provider's expertise.
Yeah. Well, certainly consultative skills are more important than ever before, and everyone says that they're important, but a lot of consultants are that consultative. So we need to make sure people are genuinely consultative, genuinely challenging the outputs of AI, and genuinely thinking about what it all means, and thinking, AI is a great tool to get you go, to elevate you to start higher level. So then you've got to elevate that again to be relevant. Otherwise, the AI will outperform you. So that's really important. The other thing that is really important is attitude. You've got to be attitudinally positive towards understanding what it can do, and then challenging about what it can't do, and was that correct? So having an AI native mindset, knowing if you want a career in any industry, I would suggest in the next 3 to 5 years, you're going to have to hop on this bus and really lean in and understand how to drive it. Otherwise, so the attitudinal piece is really important. And what's also really interesting now is what I should say is that there's another thing which AI can not only be very good at doing the donkey work, and who wants to be a donkey, it can just get a lot of work done. And a lot of agency models are around about just doing analysis and donkey type work. Well, that's going to go away for sure. So that skill set or whatever, I'm not sure it's a great use of human endeavor, is going to get less. But then also what it can do, it can really bring mentoring capabilities. So we have things called oracles in our business, which are AI trained experts in various elements of our workflow process. We have 60 of them, and they're all becoming agentic, and they're all built to talk to each other. But in the advanced quant oracles, for example, in the world, this is just doing survey design. So we can go in there and we can get with our own research quant experience, sort of ask it to design a quant survey for choice-based CPC approach for an airline loyalty program type stuff. And then we'll give some factors around what to consider, and then it'll come up with a survey. And then we can get our expert researcher to go through and say, I forgot to put a question in. It will then insert that question, then change all the logic, which would have been a whole bunch of grunt work to get that right. So that's useful. It will also then put in the competitor lists for Australia or for Turkey or wherever it may be, and get those right. Test them, challenge. We have another oracle which will then do the testing to make sure it is right. But then you can then, as an expert or as a kind of pretty specialist conjoint person, go into like a mentoring mode and have a real kind of not conversation, but a collaboration with it on the best approaches. So it can act not only like a kind of a grad that used to be just got stuff done, but it can also act like a professor to mentor you in the absolute best way to solve your problem you're trying to solve. So rather you come out with, this is the way I've always done it on these kind of things, it could suggest some other new techniques or approaches that you hadn't thought of or didn't know much about, and then bring that into the mix too. So it's very powerful.
60 oracles. It's a little bit like, I guess these are these are kind of virtual team members, AI team members. You almost kind of doubled the workforce without adding humans in that way. Is that right?
It is. And it's about efficiency. Absolutely. It's about making our jobs more efficient. So we're not doing donkey work. We're doing the high level work. It's also about quality and pace. Just the ability to do better work faster is incredible, and if you're resisting that, there's a bit of over belief that human intelligence there's a lot of human intelligence that's not actually being used as intelligently as it should be, So what's very important is we've got to all elevate ourselves, and be better for the use of it.
Great. We could talk about this stuff all day. I think the insights world is fascinating, but just we'll take a step back. A little bit where we started by talking about your entry into the industry, the Research Now, which is now the sort of biggest platforms, the data platforms in the industry now. But what are some of the lessons that you've learned as a founder? As an entrepreneur, you've done kind of 2 successful business builds. Any lessons that you can share with people?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about people. The first thing is it's about clients. People used to say to me, or maybe sometimes still, it must be great being your own boss. You can do what you want. I say, well, no, you can't, because ultimately my client's my boss, and so I've got to do what clients want. At the same time, we've got to make sure we don't just say yes to what clients want when they don't know what questions they should be asking. And in this particular market, we've got to make sure we really do consult and guide and help clients ask the right questions. Then we get the right answers. So what I strongly believe is that we must be really strong client people to empower our clients to be as good as they can be in their careers and in their jobs, to do great long-term work for them. And we've been working with Samsung now for over 10 years. It's a brilliant long-term partnership. Knowing their business really well, that's so essential. And I think it's a challenging space for some tech firms coming into our industry, looking to deal directly with the client and not really having that client service attitude, because tech without consulting, without help, it depends. It depends what you're buying it for. But in this part of the market, we think it's very important. So that's one thing I think really good. The other thing is, be open-minded and keep trying stuff and fail quickly, and also be bloody-minded sometimes. Don't accept failure too easily. It's a challenge. I don't know. One of maybe prior mistakes is kind of setting too many hairs running, having kind of too many competing priorities. Are there any other, I guess, mistakes or lessons learned that you think you'd want to share with people? Oh, that's probably one of my most personal guilty challenges. Not too many that come to mind. I haven't overthought it. I tend to also, maybe it's my mindset, I tend to just think about the positive and don't dwell on the negative. There's plenty of it. But yeah,
that's a great lesson learned anyway. So for sure. Okay, well that's been a really compelling, quick whiz through some of the possibilities and some of the changes that are happening in the industry. I think particularly the impact on on people, on teams, as well as the outputs that we can generate for clients. Is there any sort of final piece of advice if you were talking to someone who was setting up a new business and I'm deliberately not saying a tech business or an agency, I think a new business in the insight space. What's one piece of valuable advice that you'd like to leave them with?
Or be passionate. Find something you'd be really compelled by, because people don't necessarily believe that you can do what they don't necessarily believe in what the thing is doing. They believe that you believe it can do it. So be able to. And for me, in the world of research, people don't like the word sales much, and I don't do selling. But what I do is tell people that this can work. This is the benefits of it, and this is my passion. I believe it, and let me show you. So have a real product or a proposition that you can absolutely believe in and get behind, and then just go tell people about it and see whoever will listen. What I love about the insights industry, I worked in the marketing industry before and the financial services as well, is that fundamentally there's a lot of very nice people in it. And if they don't believe in something, they'll politely say they don't believe it. Whereas in some other industries, they'll say it's great and then ghost you. So it's quite a nice industry that way. But I also think in our industry, particularly, there's a lot of very good people who know what they know, but we need to help them know the new stuff that they don't yet know they don't know. And it's going to be really important. So I think there's a niche or an opportunity for anyone setting up a business in our space to be able to take those characteristics and just point to some brand new stuff that's going to be quite amazing. We've got some new silver bullets with AI, and it's just like this is the internet was the last thing. It was this game changing. So.
So I love that passion. I think you're absolutely right. If you believe passionately in what you have to sell, it doesn't feel like selling to you, and it doesn't feel like you're being sold to as a buyer either. So, yeah,
Exactly.
great tips.
Just
Andrew Cooper, thank you very much for your time. I think we've condensed a lot into that half hour, but it's really compelling vision, I think, of how the insights industry is changing with the use of all these different data sets, combining them, generating outputs that really are very actionable compared to what has previously been generated by the insights industry. So thank you very much for your time. And to everyone else, I hope you've enjoyed that conversation. We have many more in the pipeline in this Founders and Leaders series, and we'll be back shortly with some great new episodes. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mike.